It was a true love story. I remember this couple so well. They appeared to be so in love. They were together all the time, and you just knew they were going to get married. It truly looked like one of those corny Hallmark Christmas movies where you knew that this couple was just going to live happily ever after. But then all of a sudden, I got the surprise of my life when I saw the man's true intentions in the relationship. Because you see, Hans never truly loved Anna. He wanted the kingdom, but he knew that if he married Anna, he would have the kingdom. So he appeared to love Anna when he truly didn't. That's what we're going to talk about this week in our series, Satanic Christianity. Last week we talked about how Satanic Christianity creates heavy burdens on people that lock them out of heaven. Man-made rules, adding to Scripture. These rules that aren't in Scripture that really suck the fun out of following Jesus, because it's really hard to follow Jesus and follow rules at the same time. Because God doesn't want your rules. He doesn't want to see how good you can follow the rules. God's desire of His heart is for Him to be the desire of your heart. And this week, we're going to look at what it truly means to follow Jesus. We're going to look at a group of people who acted like they loved Jesus, but they really didn't. And you all may know some people who act like they love Jesus, but there's really no devotion there. We're going to talk about that today as we look at one verse this week, Matthew 23:15. This is Jesus saying, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to make one convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as fit for hell as you are." Pretty strong words there from Jesus. Because you see, the Pharisees never truly loved Jesus. They just wanted to look like they did. There was no desire to follow Him. There was no desire to worship Him. Now, when they get in public, they would pray beautiful prayers. They would give lots of money when people saw it. They loved the attention they got when they walked into rooms because they garnered attention everywhere they went. They loved the aesthetics of religion but had no desire to follow Jesus. They loved looking the part. They loved acting like they loved Jesus, but they really didn't. So the main point today is Satanic Christianity pushes external emotion over internal devotion. In other words, Satanic Christianity does everything for show. They do everything for show and have no desire to follow Jesus. And this was the bull crap that the Pharisees were preaching. They would go all around to make converts, but they weren't preaching the actual gospel. They were preaching this: it's all about what you do in public. It's all about the prayers you pray. It's all about the money you give. It's all about the external things. It's all about looking the part. And Jesus said, when you make a convert to that false religion, you make that person twice as fit for hell as you. See, the Pharisees thought all they had to do was to do everything for show, and they thought they didn't have to really, truly have a relationship with Jesus. And they taught that to others. You know, Jesus also said in Matthew chapter 15, He said something pretty strong here to the Pharisees. In Matthew chapter 15, verse 8, He says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." So in other words, the Pharisees knew what to say. They could say all the right things. They knew the Christianese. They knew how to play church. They were in every church service. They signed up for every small group. They did every service project. They did all the right things, but their hearts were far from Jesus. In other words, they did everything for show. They looked the part. They acted like they loved Jesus when they truly didn't. So what's the big takeaway from this? Why does this matter? This matters because just because it's loud, that doesn't mean it's authentic. I want to say that one more time. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's authentic. Just because it sounds right doesn't mean it is right. Just because it looks true, that doesn't mean it is true. Just because you say all the right things, that doesn't mean you're doing all the right things. So what do you say to people who appear to be playing the part? What do you say to people who are hypocrites? What do you say to the satanic Christianity? What do you do with those people? What do you do when you yourself get into that? Because I heard a pastor say one time we all have a inner Pharisee living inside of us, and he can slip out at any moment. So what do? You call out the hypocrisy and you get rid of it. Jesus called it out. Jesus called a spade a spade. He didn't beat around the bush. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He just said what needed to be said. So let's start with you. Let's start with me. Let's start with the home team first. Maybe you've gotten into just looking the part. Maybe you've gotten into, like, you know all the things to say. You know all the Bible stories. You can come to church and you can look the part, but there's really no desire to follow him. What do? You acknowledge it. Because last week I talked about we got to get real with Jesus. So if there's a little hypocrisy going on in us, we need to call that out. You acknowledge it. You expose it. You say, God, I'm a hypocrite in this area in my life. And you get rid of it. But here's the thing. You don't get rid of it by following rules. We got to hit that again. This is how you get rid of it. Jesus, take it away from me. That's it. Jesus, I don't like this in my life. And I know that I can't get rid of it on my own. And I need you to take it from me. Doesn't mean it's going to be gone like that. But I'll tell you what starts is intimacy with God. Because the Pharisees, they looked like they spent a lot of time with Jesus, but the only time they were around the things of Jesus was in public. There was no private, quiet time. There was no Bible study on their own. There was no prayer on their own. They did everything for show. They did everything in public. You will not outgrow your need for personal time with Jesus. Church cannot replace that. It was never supposed to. Knowing the Bible stories, knowing the facts cannot replace that. It was never supposed to. It takes you spending time with Jesus, and that's when he works on you. That's when he takes that hypocrisy out of you. That's when he puts that little Pharisee that's inside of us to death. What do you do if you see other people doing it? You pull them aside and say, hey, look, you and I both know you're not being legitimate. You and I both know this is for show. But I want to help you. Because here's why you get rid of the hypocrisy. Now, for some of you, that also might mean getting a new set of friends. I know that's hard, especially if they're popular. That also might mean you have to stop dating this person. Again, we need to be violent towards sin. Because here's why. There'll never be a devotion for Jesus until you call out and get rid of the hypocrisy. Because as long as hypocrisy rules, as long as satanic Christianity rules, we don't see a need for actual Bible-believing Christianity because we've got everybody fooled. So, satanic Christianity pushes external emotion over internal devotion. They can praise and so beautifully, they can cry, they can pray. But again, just because it's loud doesn't mean it's authentic. Just because it says all the right things doesn't mean it does all the right things. So, are you externally emotional about Jesus? Or are you internally devoted to Jesus? Are you doing everything for show? Or are you truly following Jesus? That's this week. We'll see you next week with week 3 of Satanic Christianity.